Have you ever felt, even in silence, that something greater pulses within you? A subtle yet intense presence that cannot be explained with words or logic? From the first moments we open our eyes to this world, we are touched by a force that is unseen, but felt. A soft and constant fire, nestled in the heart, whispering that we are not here by chance. Many call it intuition, others soul, but those who dared to follow this flame discovered a hidden path, an ancient trail that connects awakened hearts through the centuries. This is the call of the invisible, and whoever listens to it never returns to the same. Throughout history, there have been strange accounts of men and women who seem to have access to wisdom that transcends their time. Ordinary people who became beacons in their eras, without temples, without dogmas, without followers, but with a light that radiated meaning and transformation. They were artists, healers, thinkers, wandering sages. Their lives seemed stitched together by a hidden purpose, guided by something beyond reason. What few people know is that they all shared the same subtle, silent, yet incandescent lineage, the Order of the Flaming Heart. Unlike any formal school, this order has never imposed itself. It does not appear in history books, nor in the genealogies of great empires. It hides in the spaces between words, in the silences between events. It was passed from soul to soul, like a live ember handled with reverence. Its roots are as ancient as human consciousness itself. Some scholars link it with the first shamans of the Paleolithic caves. Others see its traces in the silent teachings of the Essenes or in the subtle mantras of Vedanta. The truth is that this lineage predates any culture, religion, or border. It is older than time itself. Therefore, it is not something you learn, but something you remember. There is a fundamental difference between knowing and remembering. The Order of the Flaming Heart does not recruit, does not catechize, does not convince. It merely awakens. And this awakening begins as a nuisance, a discomfort with what is shallow, with what is obvious. It begins with an inner refusal to accept a meaningless life. Have you ever felt that? That feeling that something is missing, even when everything seems to be in place? This emptiness is not absence. It's an echo, a call. Most people ignore it, and that's okay. It's not time for everyone. But there are those who can no longer silence this voice. Those who feel their heart race when they hear certain words, when they read certain texts, when they look at the sky and get emotional without reason. For these people, the invisible becomes more real than the visible. Matter loses its solidity, time seems to bend, and life gains a different texture. They are the ones who are ready to remember. And when this memory awakens, life is never the same again. This is the entry point of the order. There are no oaths, no external initiations. There is only a fire that kindles, or rather, that reveals itself, because it has always been there, hidden, waiting. This flame is the essence of the flaming heart. It's not about a physical flame, but a vibration, a frequency. It can be felt amidst chaos, in the silence of meditation, in the gaze of someone you've never seen, but seem to have known for millennia. This fire doesn't destroy, it illuminates. It doesn't burn, it transforms. Therefore, those who carry this lineage do not have a fixed face. They can be anywhere, in a bakery, in a hospital, in a studio, in a refugee camp. They can be teachers, gardeners, therapists, or wanderers. What unites them is not what they do, but what they feel and the way they live. There is a serene intensity in their gaze, a depth in their words, a compassion that needs no explanation. This is the vibrational signature of the order, invisible to the eyes, unmistakable to the awakened heart. And this order is coming back to the surface, not because it never existed, but because now there are more eyes ready to see. Amid the turbulence of the modern world, the overload of information, the incessant noise, many are beginning to feel this call. And there is no way to silence it, because it does not come from outside. It comes from the deepest core of the being, like a sacred memory that resurfaces, like an ancestral seed that germinates in fertile soil. This is the time of return. But the return is not to the past. It's to the origin, because the Order of the Flaming Heart does not belong to a time, but to a dimension of being. To the space where time, ego, and separation have no power, to the state where everything is unity, where love is not emotion, but substance. This state cannot be reached with techniques or formulas. It can only be revealed by the heart. Therefore, the true initiation is emotional. It's energetic. It's a fusion with something that has always been present, but obscured. Whoever feels this call is in fact rediscovering themselves, and the reunion is always with what already belongs to us. It's not about acquiring something new, but about releasing what was forgotten. The flame never went out, it just fell asleep, and now it begins to vibrate again, with more strength, with more presence, because this is the time when many are ready to remember. This memory does not bring easy answers, but it brings peace. It does not eliminate suffering, but reveals its purpose. Life remains challenging, but it starts to have direction. You begin to realize that you are not alone anymore, and more than that you never were. There is a lineage of souls around you, invisible but present, all carrying the same flame, all remembering together that which was never forgotten. Because the Order of the Flaming Heart is not a place, it's a state. It's not an institution, it's a frequency. It doesn't have a headquarters, but it pulses in every human being who dares to love truthfully, serve humbly, and live with presence. If you felt something different when hearing this, then maybe you are already part of it. In the records that have survived the storms of the centuries, there is always a gap, a void between what is told and what really happened. It is in this interval of silence that the Order of the Flaming Heart resides. Among the burned papyrus of Alexandria, in the stelae that withstood the winds of the Sahara, in the myths that the shamans chanted around the fire. Fragments of their presence are scattered all over the planet, like particles of a shared memory, waiting to be reassembled. But these traces do not belong to a specific civilization. They emerge at different times, with different names, in places that did not even know each other. This is because this order did not propagate through conquest, but through vibration. It echoed where there were hearts ready to listen. In ancient Sumeria, there are records of priestesses who did not submit to kings or the rules of the temple cities. They were called bearers of the eternal fire, and it is said they could heal with just a look. In Vedic India, there were accounts of beings who walked among the rishis, but they left no names. They were referred to as those who knew before knowing. In Egypt, among the initiates of the Eye of Horus, there were enigmatic figures who passed through the inner chambers without speaking, only touching their chest with their hand. And in pre-Columbian America, the Mexicas revered an archetype that had no face, but was represented by a flame in the center of a mirror. Always the fire, always the heart. Apocryphal texts and suppressed gospels also hint at the presence of this lineage. In the Gospel of Thomas, we find phrases that challenge the rational. When you make the two one and the inside like the outside, then you will enter the kingdom. There is wisdom there that points to the integration of the self, a central concept in the Flaming Order. There are also passages in the Dead Sea Scrolls that speak of children of light whose blood is not of this world, metaphors that, when reread with the heart, gain another meaning. These passages were hidden, concealed, but they endured, as if they were sealed by invisible hands, waiting for the right moment to be rediscovered. In Greece, among the mysteries of Eleusis, there were rituals that spoke of symbolic death and rebirth. Plato stated that learning is nothing more than the soul's recollection. This idea echoes exactly what the Order has always maintained, that everything is already within us, just forgotten. We also find echoes of this in Tibetan traditions, in the Bon teachings, where the heart is described as the throne of pure consciousness. There, the oldest lamas affirm that true masters do not reincarnate to teach doctrines, but to reignite the fire in those who sleep. The trails multiply and form a vibrational tapestry. In Africa, griots preserved tales about a lineage of travelers who left no footprints, but where they passed, wells of clean water were born. In ancient Scandinavia, wise women, the vulvas, guided kings and warriors with visions that did not come from the gods, but from a silent source within the chest. In all corners of the ancient world, there are similar stories. figures that appear, transform, and disappear, leaving only the warmth of something inexplicable. All these figures, in a veiled way, carried the same seal, the fire of the awakened heart. And it's not just about ancient myths. Even in the most recent religious traditions, there are clues. Saint Francis of Assisi spoke with a tenderness that set crowds ablaze, but his devotion didn't come from rules, but from an internal flame. Teresa of Avila described an ecstasy that consumed the heart with a sweet and unbearable fire. Rumi, the Sufi poet, spoke of the heart as the dwelling of the beloved and said, "Do not seek outside. What you seek is already seeking you." All of them touched, even if under cultural disguises, the same center, the incandescent point that connects everything and everyone, the vibrant origin of the order of the flaming heart. It's possible that these beings have not met each other physically, but spiritually, they were already connected long before their incarnations. The order does not operate on linear timelines. It pulses in a field where past, present, and future intertwine, a field where those who vibrate at the same frequency meet, even if separated by millennia. This is the true meaning of the word lineage, not a genetic inheritance, but an invisible thread that unites souls by vibrational affinity. And this thread is more active than ever. Currently, scholars of esoteric tradition are rediscovering symbols that were buried in ancient churches, in forgotten manuscripts, in paintings that survive the passage of time. One of the most intriguing is the flaming heart, surrounded by rays or lights, often mistaken for common religious icons. But the flaming heart does not represent pain, sacrifice, or martyrdom. It represents transcendence, unity, transmutation. And there are records of this symbol long before its Christian use. It appears in Etruscan inscriptions, in Celtic tapestries, in visions of 8th century Zen monks. It is universal because it belongs to the structure of the awakened human soul. Even science is beginning to touch on this mystery. With the discovery of the heart's electromagnetic field, thousands of times more powerful than that of the brain, scholars are beginning to understand that there is something at the center of the chest that goes beyond the biological function. Heart math, for example, shows how states of gratitude and heart coherence alter the reality around us. But the members of the order knew this long before. They taught without saying that the heart is the true antenna of the soul, that it is through the heart that one accesses the eternal. Therefore, these echoes in the sands of time are not noises from a lost past. They are living reminders that something greater pulses within us. When an ancient symbol touches us, when a myth moves us, when a forgotten phrase brings us to tears, it is our lineage waving. Not for us to follow a model, but to remind us of who we are. And what we are is much more than history, flesh, and time. We are fragments of the primordial fire, condensed into human form, seeking to return to our origin. The Order of the Flaming Heart did not survive in hiding out of fear or weakness. It remained silent because its language is not of the mind. It speaks with the heart. Therefore, it can only be understood by those who feel. And every historical fragment that resurfaces, every new echo that touches the soul, is like a mirror placed in front of us. An invitation not to follow, but to remember. Not to believe, but to feel. The order does not ask for faith, but presence. And these signs, scattered through the ages, are like silent compasses pointing in the same direction, inward. Throughout the millennia, even without official records, the Order of the Flaming Heart kept alive a subtle transmission among those who were ready to become guardians of the inner fire. These guardians were not chosen by blood, power, or social standing. They were recognized by the intensity of the silent glow they carried in their eyes, by the compassion that emanated from their simplest actions, and by their ability to remain whole even amidst chaos. They did not flaunt titles, nor did they seek recognition. They were, in essence, living bridges between the invisible and the visible. And their legacy is not found in genealogies or archives, but rather in the vibration of their deeds, in the light they left behind. The process of recognizing a new guardian did not involve public ceremonies or formal rituals. It was a vibrational recognition, a resonance that occurred between awakened souls. When someone ignited their inner fire to such an extent that their presence began to generate silent transformation around them, he or she was naturally integrated into the order. Some were touched even in childhood by inexplicable events or encounters with hidden masters. Others went through long periods of darkness and suffering until the inner fire finally revealed itself. In all cases, the criteria were the same: intensity of presence, purity of intention, and willingness to serve the whole, even if it cost everything. These guardians understood that true power does not lie in dominating the outer world, but in transmuting their own shadows. Therefore, a significant part of the training they received, if we can call it that, was internal, often painful, but absolutely transformative. They faced silent trials, humiliations that tested their ego, losses that emptied their false identities, invitations to deep solitude that revealed their own soul. It was in this empty space, devoid of everything that the personality valued, that the genuine flame emerged, and once it was lit, nothing could extinguish it. The language used among the guardians was subtle. Often, they didn't even use words. A gesture, a look, or a silence laden with meaning was enough to convey teachings that could never be spoken. The lessons came from observing nature, the flow of time, and coincidences loaded with significance. They were masters of the unseen, and their school was life itself. They knew that the deepest truth cannot be taught directly. It can only be evoked, provoked, awakened, like an ember that reignites at the touch of the wind. And despite their discreet performance, the influence of the guardians was monumental. In crucial moments of history, they were present, but on the sidelines, behind the scenes. They inspired silent decisions that prevented wars, healed devastated hearts with a single presence, planted ideas in fertile minds that would change the course of civilizations. They were present in councils of elders, in assemblies of thinkers, in solitary pilgrimages, in acts of anonymous courage. They were rarely remembered by names, but they were always remembered with love. The inheritance they left behind was not material, it was vibrational. Wherever a guardian went, the space was altered. Those who encountered them, even without understanding, came out transformed, sometimes with tears, sometimes with profound silence, sometimes with a sudden urge to change everything. They ignited flames in others without needing to touch, and when they left invisible, but absolutely real traces. This is the signature of the lineage, the subtle yet lasting impact. A presence that remains even when the body is gone. The internal practices of the order were many, but all led to the same destination, the total integration of the self. Conscious breathing was one of the keys, not just as a technique, but as a gateway to the present moment. Silent meditation, practiced in natural settings, was common among the guardians. Long, aimless walks, symbolic fasts, gestures of surrender without witnesses, were rituals of purification and alignment. And above all, there was the act of serving. Serving others, the planet, life itself, without expecting anything in return. This was the true sacrament of the order. At certain moments in history, the guardians would gather in small circles. There were no hierarchies, nor fixed leaders. Each one knew their role, and respect was absolute. During these meetings, which could last minutes or days, time seemed to disappear. Hearts would unite at a single frequency. Often, it wasn't even necessary to speak. The transmission occurred on a plane beyond language, where thoughts became light, and the light revealed forgotten truths. In these meetings, they updated their directions, aligned their purposes, and strengthened the invisible bond of lineage. There were no documents, no sacred scriptures. What existed was living memory. Each guardian was a bearer of wisdom, and this wisdom was not memorized, it was experienced. Therefore, even separated by centuries, the teachings maintained coherence. The flame did not go out because it was not in books, but in the heart of living beings. And this direct, silent, and loving transmission crossed time with more strength than any written tradition. It was the tradition of presence. It's important to understand that this lineage is neither exclusive nor elitist. All human beings have the potential to ignite their inner fire. But only those who choose to walk through the fire of their own soul without fleeing, without hiding, become guardians. Because there is no deeper initiation than looking inward with radical courage. The Order has never sought numbers, fame, or structure. It sought coherence. And every time someone chooses to live truthfully, love unconditionally, and serve with humility, a new guardian is recognized. Not by someone, but by the very vibration of the cosmos. This legacy cannot be bought nor acquired by external merit. It only reveals itself to those who are ready to lose everything they believe they are, to finally discover who they truly are. And upon discovering this, they become living fire. And this fire is the true legacy. It burns everything that is illusory and illuminates everything that is real. Therefore, the guardians do not belong to the world, but they also do not deny it. They walk among men as humans, but carry within them the consciousness of eternity. Since the earliest eras of human memory, the heart has always been seen as more than just an organ. Ancient civilizations treated it as an inner sanctuary, a sacred center, the throne of the spirit. The members of the Order of the Flaming Heart understood this truth not as poetic metaphor, but as vibrational reality. To them, the heart was literally an interdimensional portal, the living bridge between the visible world and subtle realities. Therefore, everything began and ended with it. There was no higher philosophy nor deeper practice than the art of remaining centered in the heart, for there dwelled the true consciousness, the one that observes in silence and feels with reverence. Contemporary science is beginning, albeit timidly, to confirm what the ancients already knew through direct experience. The HeartMath Institute has demonstrated that the heart's electromagnetic field is tens of thousands of times more powerful than that of the brain. And not only that, this field extends beyond the body, influencing the environment and people around it. When someone enters a state of heart coherence, that is, alignment between emotion, breathing, and heartbeat, the whole body comes into harmony. Furthermore, other nearby hearts begin to tune into this same pattern in a process of energetic resonance. This is exactly what the guardians of the inner fire did millennia ago, albeit without the tools of modern science. For the Order, the heart was not just an antenna, but a silent oracle. It doesn't think, it knows. It doesn't analyze, it reveals. And this revelation only occurs when the noise of the mind and personality is dissolved. True knowledge comes from deep feeling, not reasoning. The mind divides, the heart integrates. The mind projects, the heart perceives what is. Therefore, listening to the heart required inner silence. Not a forced silence, but one that emerges naturally when the need for control is relinquished. The initiates trained in this listening with patience and surrender, because they knew that therein lay the gateway to the divine. And this portal was not symbolic, it was functional. When a guardian accessed the full vibrational state of the heart, they could perceive parallel realities, communicate with higher consciousness, access memories of past lives, and receive precise guidance on actions to take. There was no theatrics in this process. It was simple, straightforward, and silent. An expansion of consciousness, an internal unfolding. The sensation was of being absolutely present, but at the same time connected with something immeasurable, like being both inside and outside of time simultaneously. This state was not exclusive. Any human being, by touching the heart with sincerity, could glimpse it. But the members of the Order dedicated themselves entirely to this practice, and this required continuous purification, profound forgiveness, radical honesty, total surrender. Because the heart cannot be accessed by force. It only opens when there is truth. Any personal lie, no matter how small, closes the portal. Any manipulation, any desire to control the other, any refusal to feel what is present, all of this seals the internal doors. Therefore, the guardians were known for their transparency and simplicity. They did not seek to impress, but to touch. The heart, for them, was a cosmic instrument. Its beats did not only mark biological time, but pulsed in resonance with the beats of the universe. Each beat was an opportunity for presence. Each contraction and expansion was a reminder of the breath of life itself. They said that to listen to one's own heart was to hear the language of God, a language that does not use words, but vibrations. And the more aligned a being was with this vibration, the more peaceful and powerful their life became, because they began to act not out of fear, but out of love. There are ancient records that mention the art of inner listening. Tibetan writings speak of the sound of silence, a subtle hum that arises when the mind quiets and the heart takes center stage. Christian mystics referred to this state as prayer without words. In the Upanishads, there is the idea that the Atman resides in the center of the heart, and to know it is to know the whole. In all these traditions, we see the recognition of the heart as the place of truth, and the Order of the Flaming Heart united all these strands into a living, present, transformative practice. Upon accessing the heart, the Guardians understood the hidden codes of life. Everything that seemed like chaos or injustice took on a new meaning. They began to see patterns behind events, as if a vast cosmic organism was in a constant dance of learning. They no longer sought to escape pain, but to traverse it with dignity. They did not resist loss, but recognized in it an opportunity for disidentification. This did not mean apathy. On the contrary, they became more sensitive, more compassionate, more attentive. But they no longer reacted, they responded, from the stillness of the center. This quietness was not the absence of emotion, it was full presence. At the heart's center, the Guardian encountered all human emotions: pain, joy, fear, love, but without being swept away by any. He was the space that contains them all, and because of that, he was able to sustain any situation with serenity. This presence was healing in and of itself, not because he did anything, but because he was something. Being a vibrant presence was enough, and often simply sitting next to someone in pain was enough for that person to start remembering their own light. The Order understood that slumbering humanity had lost its connection to this center, and for that reason, it lived in constant search outside of itself, for answers, validation, meaning. But all of this was already available, in the center of the chest. Therefore, the Guardians did not teach new knowledge. They taught how to return home, to rediscover what was always there. And this was their greatest mission, to reignite the fire in the hearts of others, not with words, but with presence, not with promises, but with example, because only fire awakens fire. The vibrational presence of an awakened heart has the power to change entire environments. It's a quiet field, but magnetic. It influences without forcing, transforms without asking. And that's how the Order stays alive, not in books, but in the subtle fields created by those who live in the heart. They are points of light in the Earth's grid, keeping the planet connected to its spiritual essence. And the more hearts that open, the stronger this field becomes. Not by imposition, but by vibration. The frequency of love is contagious and inevitable. Upon understanding the heart as a portal, the Guardians viewed the entire body as a temple. They cared for it with reverence, not out of vanity, but out of respect for the soul's instrument. They nourished themselves mindfully, breathed with presence, moved with intention, and they knew that every gesture was a sacred act, because everything done with the heart becomes an offering. Nothing is too small when done with love. Therefore, even the simplest tasks, preparing a meal, listening to a friend, watering a plant, became rituals of communion with the divine. The Order of the Flaming Heart knew that the heart's portal was the key not only to personal enlightenment, but also to collective healing. Thus, its existence, albeit silent, is revolutionary, because a single awakened heart can alter the fate of many. It can disarm invisible wars, dissolve ancestral traumas, activate forgotten potentials. And at this very moment, thousands of hearts around the world are opening, some with pain, others with wonder, but all are touching the same fire, the fire of true love, the one that transforms without destroying, the one that does not burn, it illuminates. The journey of the members of the Order of the Flaming Heart has never been marked by ease or visible rewards. On the contrary, it has always been about traversing the deepest trials of the human being, not as a punishment, but as a means of transmutation. They understood, in a visceral way, that there is no true light without first facing one's own darkness. The flame that burns in the awakened heart is precisely fueled by the shadows that have been integrated. There is no enlightenment without purification. There is no true presence without disidentification from masks. Therefore, the path of the Order is a constant invitation to detachment, surrender, and the symbolic death of everything that is not essential. The trials of fire do not announce themselves clearly. They emerge as crises, losses, breakups, illnesses, failures. Moments when the ground disappears, and there is nothing to do but look within. For the initiate, this is the exact turning point, not because they find an immediate solution, but because they understand that there is nothing to fix. The wound does not need to be hidden. It needs to be traversed with presence. It is at this moment that the ego begins to crumble, and with it fall the armors, the roles, the speeches. Only the bare core of the being remains. And there, amidst the pain, the flame reveals itself more clearly than ever. This crossing, referred to in alchemy as nigredo, is the first stage of true transmutation. Jung spoke of it as the dark night of the soul, an inevitable step for anyone seeking to integrate their wholeness. In the Sufi tradition, this is the moment when the lover is left by the beloved so that they can discover that the beloved was within them all along. In Gnostic texts, it is the time of the desert where all answers are withdrawn so that the question becomes sacred. The Order recognizes this moment as the seed of rebirth, for it is only when one loses everything that they can find what truly matters. When going through these trials, the initiate learns the difference between resistance and surrender. Resistance is the movement of the mind, which attempts to control, justify, escape. Surrender is the movement of the heart that allows itself to fully feel without seeking an exit. Surrender is not passivity, it's a deep acceptance of the present reality, just as it is. This acceptance, paradoxical as it may seem, unleashes a tremendous internal force. When there is no longer an escape, the being becomes whole. And in this wholeness, the flame expands, not by conquest, but by clarity. Every pain traversed with awareness becomes a step in vibrational ascension, and not because there is merit in it, but because pain, when accepted, dissolves the illusion of separation. By deeply feeling one's own pain, the initiate becomes capable of feeling the pain of others with true empathy. And this empathy is the foundation of compassionate service. The members of the Order knew that every suffering carries within it a key. Each tear is an initiation, each loss, an invitation to detachment, each fall, a preparation for flight. The transmuting fire does not eliminate emotions, it purifies them. Anger, fear, jealousy, sadness, all of this still arises, but now it's seen with different eyes. The guardian observes his emotions without identifying with them. He learns to bear the discomfort without reacting. With this, the emotional body begins to organize around the heart center. Impulsive reactions give way to conscious responses. Life ceases to be a sequence of battles and becomes a dance with mystery. Suffering still exists, but now it's fertile. It leads to wisdom. It's crucial to understand that this transmutation is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. The inner fire needs to be fueled every day, with every choice, with every gesture. The guardians knew this. That's why they nurtured a loving vigilance over their own internal states. They weren't seeking perfection, but consistency. They knew that darkness doesn't disappear, it's integrated. And once integrated, it transforms into light. Not the light of spiritual arrogance, but that of mature humility. The kind that recognizes that we are all on the same path, at different stages of awakening. Often, the greatest leaps in consciousness occurred in moments of utmost despair, when the guardian had tried everything, when there was no strength left, when all techniques had failed. That's when grace appeared. Not as an external solution, but as an internal expansion. A moment of clarity, of silence, of absolute surrender. And in that moment, something changed forever. The pain did not disappear, but it no longer held the same power. Fear still existed, but it no longer paralyzed. Doubt still arose, but it no longer hindered movement. The internal alchemy of the Order is an advanced yet profoundly organic spiritual technology. It operates on the rhythms of the soul, respects the cycles of existence, and embraces polarities as parts of a whole. Therefore, the initiate does not need to rid themselves of their shadows. They only need to learn to dialogue with them, to look into the eyes of their own fear without shrinking, to embrace their own desire without losing themselves in it, to recognize that everything is a part, that the shadow is merely forgotten light, that pain is just love that has not yet been seen. This profound understanding makes the guardian a living mirror for others, not by their words, but by their presence. By being at peace with their own darkness, they allow others to relax into their own humanity. By not hiding their wounds, they invite others to heal their own. And by walking with humility, they reveal that true power is not in dominating, but in loving. Therefore, the guardians are deeply human. They cry, they fall, they get frustrated, but they do not lose themselves because they have already found the center that supports everything. The inner flame does not shine despite trials, but because of them. Each challenge faced with awareness makes it stronger. Each moment of surrender makes it purer. And each act of true love makes it more contagious. Therefore, the path of the Order is called the path of fire. Not the fire that burns out of hatred, but the one that consumes for truth. The one that transforms without destroying. The one that purifies without judging. This fire is what distinguishes the initiate, and once lit, it never goes out. Behind the great moments of humanity, beyond the curtains of official history, there have always been discreet but profoundly transformative presences. Figures who never sought the stage, yet influenced the entire scene. Beings who did not carry titles, did not claim authority, and yet changed lives with a simple gesture, with a silence, with a look. These are the silent masters, the most advanced guardians of the Flaming Heart Order. Their actions have never been public, but their influence spans centuries. They are not remembered by books, but by the souls they touched. They are not recognized by face, but by vibration. Contrary to what many believe, true masters do not wish to be followed. They do not create dependency, nor do they build hierarchies. They liberate. They are among us and often go unnoticed. They can be a stranger on the subway who looks at you with compassion, a teacher who awakens something in you with an unexpected phrase, a child who smiles and disarms all your defenses. The silent masters do not announce themselves. They emerge, and their presence has the power to reorganize everything around without uttering a single word, because their frequency speaks louder than any speech. The Order of the Flaming Heart has always understood that true wisdom does not impose itself. It offers itself, and it is only absorbed by those who are ready to receive it. That's why the masters act on the fringes, between the lines, in seemingly casual encounters. Their mission is not to teach absolute truths, but to awaken dormant memories. They do not provide answers, but provoke questions. And in doing so, they open portals within us, because they know that the true master is not outside, it's within. And all they do is lead us back to it. Throughout the ages, these masters have taken various forms. Some were hermits, living in mountains, invisible to the world, but sought after by those who truly needed them. Others were artists, musicians, healers, poets, navigators, wanderers. At certain times they emerged as counselors to kings, prophets disguised as pilgrims, mothers who, without ever leaving home, changed the fate of generations. They never said, "I am a master." They would say, at most, "Remember yourself." And that was enough, because their words were always mirrors, not for the ego, but for the soul. Even well-known historical figures, when viewed through the lens of the Order, reveal themselves as expressions of this lineage. Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching before disappearing into the desert. Master Eckhart, who said that, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." Kabir, the weaver who spoke in verses and confused Hindus and Muslims, saying that truth has no religion. These beings, despite having left records, never built systems. They were rivers that flowed between rigid banks. They preferred mystery to explanation, and for this reason, they remain alive, because they touched the eternal. The silent masters understand that awakening is not linear. They know that each soul has its own timing. Therefore, they do not judge, do not force, do not pressure. They wait with the patience of those who have already passed through the fire. And when they perceive a spark igniting, they approach gently. Sometimes, subtle words are enough. Other times, absolute silence is necessary. In some cases, they provoke crises, destabilize structures, remove comforts. But never out of vanity. Always out of love. The real love. The one that sees beyond appearances and acts out of vibrational compassion. They operate through synchronicity. They make you find a forgotten book, a video that disconcerts you, a sentence that seems to have been written just for you. They manipulate the subtle field, not by control, but by alignment with universal intelligence. And they do it with such subtlety that you believe you discovered everything on your own. This is the greatest gift from a silent master, to return to the other their own autonomy. They do not create disciples, they create mirrors, and each mirror, upon recognizing itself, becomes another link in the chain of the order. It's important to understand that not everyone who has knowledge are masters. The true master is not defined by the content they transmit, but by the transformation they provoke. There are many scholars who speak about spirituality, but whose words are disconnected from the heart. The master of the order, on the other hand, might say little or nothing, and yet still ignite a soul. Because their power does not come from knowing, but from being. They live what they teach, even when they teach only with their gaze. Many of these masters will never be known. They pass through this life in silence, fulfilling their mission without leaving external traces. But on subtle planes, they are recognized as stars that illuminate the grid of the planet. They help sustain the Earth's vibrational field, keeping the possibility of awakening accessible to all. And when they depart, they leave a vortex of light in the space where they lived. Their homes, their objects, even their words continue to vibrate with the frequency of love. And often, these places become points of healing, even without anyone knowing the reason. There are also those who operate on invisible planes, masters who have already left the physical body, but continue acting in subtle dimensions, assisting other guardians, inspiring actions, protecting processes. They visit dreams, intuitions, visions. They appear in deep meditations, sometimes as known figures, sometimes as formless presences. And they always leave a mark, a warmth in the chest, a sense of familiarity, a sudden urge for change. These encounters are not hallucinations, they are reconnections. What unites all these masters, incarnated or not, is the vibration of the flaming heart. A fire that does not consume, but warms. That does not judge, but welcomes. That does not demand, but invites. They are the living manifestation of the order, not in temples, but in frequencies. Not in scriptures, but in gestures. And their presence is increasingly necessary in a world saturated with words, noise, and misinformation. In a time when everyone wants to teach, the silent masters remind us of the beauty of just being. Perhaps you've already crossed paths with one of them. Maybe you've felt that inexplicable peace when you're next to someone. Perhaps you've cried in front of a stranger who said nothing, but understood you completely. Maybe a master has passed through your life without a name, without a trace, but left you more whole. And perhaps you now are becoming one of them. Because every guardian, upon maturing, becomes a master, not by choice, but by resonance. When the fire is strong enough, it illuminates without effort, and those who illuminate others have already traversed the path of darkness with courage. The fire that burns in the heart of a guardian of the order is not confined to self-knowledge. It is not just a flash of personal enlightenment. It is a living force that spreads to the world. This fire has the power to heal, not as a gift reserved for the chosen ones, but as a state of presence accessible to every being who has navigated their shadows and surrendered to truth. To heal, in the deepest sense of the word, is not to fix something broken, but to restore the connection with what has always been whole. Thus, the guardian becomes a channel of reintegration, and their vibration reorganizes everything around, not by direct action, but by energetic coherence. Where there is truth, there is healing. Where there is real love, there is abundance. Love, truth, and abundance are not separate concepts. They are different expressions of the same central vibration of the flaming heart. The healing love is not a fleeting feeling, nor an emotional attachment. It is a living, creative intelligence that dissolves the soul's blockages. Truth, when spoken from the heart, does not offend, but liberates. And abundance is not accumulation, but flow. The true guardian understands that spiritual and material prosperity is a natural consequence of a state of internal alignment. It's not about desiring more things, but about allowing life to manifest without resistance. The Order has always taught in silence that the universe does not reward effort, but authenticity. It's not about how much you struggle, but how much you surrender to what is true. When a human being lives from the center of their heart, they naturally attract everything that is coherent with their vibration. Relationships, opportunities, experiences, everything flows. And not because they control reality, but because they stop blocking the flow. The ego is the greatest saboteur of abundance. It desires to control, predict, guarantee. The heart trusts, surrenders, collaborates with the whole. This abundance does not exclude material goods. On the contrary, it includes them in a healthy way. The guardians of the Order did not reject matter, for they knew that everything is spiritual in essence. They understood that money, for example, is just energy in motion, and when it flowed with purpose, awareness, and gratitude, it became a tool for healing and expansion. True abundance is that which benefits the whole, not just the individual. It is that which uplifts, that which sustains, that which inspires. And this is only possible when the heart governs the mind. Many of the great silent masters in history lived in material simplicity, not for lack of options, but by vibrational choice. They knew that the fewer attachments, the more room for the flow of grace. However, they never judged wealth itself. They knew that the problem isn't in what one owns, but in what owns us. And when a guardian accessed the pure frequency of the heart, abundance began to manifest in all areas. Vibrant health, meaningful connections, intuitive wisdom, causeless joy. All of this was seen as an extension of the internal fire. The cure for the Order has always been a vibrational process. Physical, emotional, or mental illnesses were understood as energetic blockages, disconnections between the soul and the body. And for this reason, the treatment was not external, but internal. The first cure occurred when the individual returned to inhabit their own heart. It was not about denying suffering, but reconnecting with the source. Many guardians healed simply by their presence. They did not apply specific techniques, but radiated a frequency that reorganized the subtle fields of those who approached, like the sun that warms and heals effortlessly. It is at this point that truth becomes medicine. Not truth as judgment, but as a mirror. When one sees oneself clearly, without masks, without illusions, the true healing process begins. Therefore, the guardians of the Order spoke little and listened a lot. They knew that the simple act of listening with the heart already initiates a healing field, and when they spoke, their words came loaded with vibration. Each sentence was an activation code, and often, what seemed trivial was, in fact, a call to the deepest transformation. The true cure does not remove the pain but reveals its purpose. It does not eliminate the trauma, but shows what it came to teach. And this completely transforms the relationship with life. The guardian learns to love even what hurt, because he recognizes that each wound was an invitation to awakening. And in this recognition, the soul aligns with its essence. The guilt dissolves, the shame frees itself, the fear calms down, and a new fertile space arises, ready to receive grace. This is the silent miracle of the awakened heart. The Order also understood the importance of cycles. They knew there are times of expansion and times of retreat, moments of harvest and moments of pruning. and that true abundance respects these rhythms. Therefore, the Guardians didn't force results. They cooperated with the flow of life. They knew that each seed planted in the heart would bloom at the right time. And this gave them peace. The urgency disappeared. The desperation dissolved. They remained centered even when everything around seemed to crumble, because they knew the fire does not die. It merely retreats to grow. This awareness created a life of profound lightness, even in the face of difficulties. The Guardian could face intense challenges, but maintained a sparkle in their eyes, a serene gratitude, a silent faith. Not because they were immune to suffering, but because they had understood its purpose. And therefore, everything became part of the journey. Joy and sadness, gain and loss, light and shadow. Nothing was excluded. Everything was transformed. And this constant alchemy made life a sacred field where each encounter was an opportunity for expansion. In this context, abundance was seen as the natural state of being, not as something to be achieved, but as something to be remembered. And the more the Guardian remembered who he was, the more life flowed around him with beauty and coherence. Time expanded, opportunities arose, relationships deepened, creativity overflowed. Everything became an expression of the inner fire. And this fire knew no scarcity, because it came from the inexhaustible source of love that sustains all existence. By living in this state, the Guardian became a blessing to the world, not because he did great things, but because he did everything with great presence. He transformed the ordinary into extraordinary. He radiated healing just by being who he was, and his life became a living testimony of the order. He didn't need to convince anyone. His abundance was his teaching, his truth, his medicine, his love, his light. And thus, silently, he continued to touch hearts, reignite dormant fires, and expand the vibrational field of the planet. In times like these, when the world seems to sway between extremes, when structures crumble and old certainties shatter, the Order of the Flaming Heart re-emerges not as an institution or religion, but as a vibration that reignites within thousands of beings around the planet. And this is no coincidence. The lineage never ceased to exist. It just hid itself, waiting for the moment when mature hearts were ready to carry the dormant torch. And now, this moment has arrived. Not as a spectacular revelation, but as a subtle call pulsating within you. A silent fire that insists on burning, even when everything seems dark. And if you feel this, then you need to know, you are the missing link. This statement is not symbolic nor rhetorical. It is literal. For centuries, the lineage of the Order remained invisible, preserved by those who remembered themselves. But every cycle renews, and there comes a point where the Guardian ceases to be a disciple and becomes a pillar. You, who may have lived an entire life searching for meaning, traversing inner deserts, deconstructing beliefs, and rebuilding your truth with trembling hands. You are what was missing. The Order is not returning. It is emerging from within you. Because the Order is you, awake, present, whole, vibrant. There is no more time to hide the flame. The world needs your light, and that doesn't mean becoming a leader or spiritual guide. It means being radically honest, lovingly present, absurdly true. The new flame doesn't demand rituals, but daily choices. It doesn't ask for dogmas, but authenticity. It's not about following a mystical path, but about living with integrity in every gesture, speaking with love, looking with compassion, acting with consciousness. It is in this everyday life that the Order pulses, invisible to the eyes, but real in the vibrational field. You are the missing link because you carry within you the ancient codes that humanity has forgotten. They are not in books. They are in your pain transformed into wisdom. They are in your silences that listen. They are in your eyes that do not judge, in your hands that heal, even when they merely hold another hand. These codes are living memories awaiting activation, and now that you've come this far, they reveal themselves. Not because someone granted them, but because you rediscovered them within you. You've always been part of the lineage. You had just forgotten. The activation of this new flame does not happen in an extraordinary way. It begins as a discomfort with superficiality, as a refusal to live life on autopilot. It grows as a silent restlessness, as a desire to serve, to contribute, to love more authentically. It then transforms into action. You begin to speak differently, to listen more, to offer your time, your energy, your attention. And when you realize it, something has changed. You no longer live for yourself. You have become a point of light in the living network of the Order, an awakened cell in a planetary organism that pulses beyond time. And there are many like you. On all continents, in all cultures, souls are remembering. Some through pain, others through love, others still through the exhaustion of everything that was false. They are emerging spontaneously, like flowers amidst the concrete. They don't follow gurus. They don't build sects. They don't shout their spirituality. They simply live with presence. And for that reason, they transform the world. The new flame spreads like this, not by imposition, but by vibrational contagion. One awakened heart awakens another, and another, and another, until the entire earth pulses to a new rhythm. You may wonder, but who am I to carry this flame? And this question reveals that you are ready, because only those who have recognized their insignificance in the face of mystery can sustain the light without corrupting it. The Order never chose the strongest nor the wisest. It chose the most truthful, those who, even in fear, continued, those who, even without understanding, trusted, those who, even wounded, loved. It is this quality of soul that makes someone a link in the lineage. And if you've made it this far, there's no more doubt. The flame is already lit within you. Now is the time to embrace this fire, to stop waiting for approval, to cease hiding your light for fear of causing discomfort, to abandon the modesty that denies your own greatness. True humility is not denying your power, it's putting it to service. The new flame demands action, not in the sense of external agitation, but of active presence, a steady gaze that comforts, a silence that sustains, a word that uplifts. A yes said with courage, a no said with respect. It is in this subtlety that the Order is reborn, in you. Perhaps you felt for a long time that you didn't belong to this world, that there was something wrong with you, that you were too sensitive, too intense, too deep. And now you understand. It wasn't excess, it was truth. You felt more because you were connected to dimensions that others hadn't yet accessed. You hurt more because you perceived what was hidden. You were more because you've always been part of something bigger. And now it's time to transform all of this into conscious action. Not to prove anything, but because you already know who you are. The time for slumber has ended. Humanity is in transition, and you are part of the silent group that keeps the torch of memory lit. Every gesture you make matters. Every choice you make with your heart changes the collective field. You may not see it, but what you do in silence resonates throughout the world. The new flame is contagious, and you, with your story, your pains, your victories, your love, you are the spark that was missing. Acknowledge this, honor this, and move on, not to seek something, but to be what you have always been. The Order of the Flaming Heart now lives through you, and you, unknowingly, were the link that would close the circle. When the last flame of a candle goes out, there is still heat in the wick. There is a glowing memory that remains, even when the visible light disappears. Such is the legacy of the Order of the Blazing Heart. It does not live in monuments, nor in documents. It lives in gestures that have not been forgotten, in silences that have healed, in hearts that have touched others without uttering a word. The lineage does not need recognition. It does not desire glory. What it upholds is a fire that does not belong to this world, but reveals itself in it, whenever a human being chooses to love authentically. Whenever someone decides, even without knowing why, to be a point of light amid the confusion. It is in this gesture, seemingly simple, that eternity manifests itself. The blazing heart does not die because it is not constructed. It is revealed. And what is revealed from the truth cannot be erased. It lives beyond biology, beyond identities, beyond names. It continues pulsing in every being who chose to be presence instead of appearance, compassion instead of control, truth instead of convenience. This fire is the eternal breath of creation, the same that shaped stars, the same that drew the human soul. And when a soul recognizes this in itself, there is no longer separation between the divine and the mundane. Everything becomes sacred, because everything is seen from the center. The legacy of the Order is expressed as a living field that spans centuries and continents. It is not found in academic records, but in the invisible layers that support the evolution of human consciousness. In every moment of collapse, there have been flaming hearts maintaining the pulse of reality. In the fall of empires, in times of plague, on battlefields, in the dark nights of civilizations, there has always been someone who, even in silence, kept the flame burning. A gesture of tenderness amidst pain, an act of courage without witnesses, a word that prevented a tragedy. These are the invisible bricks of a temple that never crumbled, the temple of the inner fire. And this temple is not ethereal. It is built in every soul that decides to live from the heart. The modern world, with all its technology, still does not understand the power of this choice. But everything that is truly transformative is born from it. Not from external revolutions, but from the silent revolution that occurs when someone decides to be consistent with their essence. This consistency is the greatest force of creation. It is true abundance. It is the only cure. The legacy of the Order is therefore a living inheritance, and whoever accesses it becomes a transmitter. You don't need to talk about it. Just live it. Your presence already carries the codes. Throughout the ages, many have tried to erase this lineage. They attempted to silence its messengers, destroy its symbols, discredit its existence. But what they failed to understand is that the fire doesn't rely on external structures. Yes, it hid, but it did not die. And when all seemed lost, it would re-emerge elsewhere, in another form, in another heart. The flame has no homeland. It doesn't have a fixed name. It doesn't have a religion. It appears wherever there is truth. Wherever there is someone willing to feel deeply, to traverse their own shadows, to transform pain into service. And that's why it always rekindles. The flaming heart is not a privilege. It is a right for all. But not everyone claims it. Many go through life distracted, looking outside for what already pulses within. Others deny their own sensitivity, stifling the fire to fit into norms imposed upon them. But there are those who, even without understanding, cannot ignore the call. And these, even though stumbling, even though lost for moments, end up finding their way back. Because the fire calls, and once heard, its voice never silences again. This voice doesn't shout, it whispers. Whispers in the nights of solitude, in the moments of rupture, in the inexplicable encounters, in the intuitions that defy logic. It's always there, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And when it does, everything changes, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Because the greatest transformation is not changing the world, it's changing the perspective. The flaming heart teaches us to see with different eyes, to see beyond fear, beyond guilt, beyond neediness, to see with love, to see with presence, to see with the light that never goes out. Upon assuming this legacy, the Guardian understands that there is no greater mission than to be what one truly is. It seems simple, but it requires courage, the courage to no longer hide, to not adapt to others' expectations, to live fully, even when the world insists on fragmentation. This courage is the fuel of the flame, and that's why it grows in silence, but spreads like fire in a dry field. It only takes one awakened heart for many to begin to remember. The Order thrives on this, from memory to memory, from heart to heart, from flame to flame. And this memory does not end with death, because the Guardian who lived in truth leaves a vibrational mark that remains. Their presence continues to echo, guide, inspire. They may leave, but their light spreads, like a perfume that lingers in the air, like a melody that resonates in silence. The flaming heart does not die, it multiplies. Each time a guardian departs, 10 others awaken, because the flame, once lit, ignites others. And so, the lineage perpetuates, not by imposition, but by the contagion of presence. The true end of the lineage would be the forgetting of its own essence. But this is no longer possible. The time of amnesia is over. The earth is vibrating at a different rhythm, and more beings are reconnecting with their spark. You are part of this. You are continuity. You are legacy. You are the future of this lineage, and there is nothing you need to do other than being completely yourself, with all your scars, your gifts, your story. Nothing in you is a mistake. Everything in you is a path. And if one day you doubt, if you forget, if you fall, remember this: the fire will still be there, waiting, silent but alive. Because the blazing heart does not demand perfection, it only asks for presence. And presence is the gateway to everything, to healing, to love, to truth, to abundance, to the reunion with the whole. The order lives in this instant, in this now, in the space between one breath and another. It is not distant, it is in the center of your chest, and there it will remain, always. The blazing heart never dies, because it is, always has been, and always will be, life itself in its purest form. Mind unfettered, if this flame has touched you, then now it's your turn to keep the fire burning. Share from the heart. What within you seems to have always burned silently, even before hearing this call? Do you feel there is something greater trying to emerge through you? Write in the comments the phrase, "The fire is alive in me," if you feel you are already part of this lineage, and tell us when in your life this flame began to shine brighter. Remember, when you comment, you're not just expressing yourself, you're also triggering memories in other hearts. Together, we are the vibrational network that supports this new era. Together, we reignite the order. And now that you have accessed this sacred memory, don't stop here. On your screen is the next step of the journey, the Book of 33 Steps, the hidden map Jesus left for enlightenment. A deep dive into the hidden map left by one of the greatest masters of the order, Jesus. You will discover the 33 steps of awakening hidden between the lines of his teachings, revealing a spiritual cartography intended for all those who are ready to remember. Click now and continue this sacred journey. We are minds unfettered, the flame that can no longer be contained. See you there.